Homage to My Hips by Lucille Clifton a little bit with you. So as you can read above here, this poem appeared in Clifton's 1980 collection, Two-Headed Woman, and it plays off the conventional love poem in which a speaker, usually a male, praises parts of his beloved's body. So what she's doing here is she's taking rules and saying, no thanks, not for me, flipping them on the script. And you'll see that she does that a lot. She flouts rules a lot. She says, nope, not going to do it. So I'm going to start off just reading it through. It's very short, and then we'll go back and talk about these details here. These hips are big hips. They need space to move around in. They don't fit into little petty places. These hips are free hips. They don't like to be held back. These hips have never been enslaved. They go where they want to go. They do what they want to do. These hips are mighty hips. These hips are magic hips. I have known them to put a spell on a man and spin him like a top. All right, so let's go back to the first page here, the first few lines. So there are several different things, rhetorical devices going on here. The first rhetorical strategy you should notice is that she does not use proper grammar, capitalization, punctuation, etc. Just like her body will not be subject to social expectations, she also refuses to follow grammatical rules. Why, if her body's not going to be subject and limited, why should her words? Why should her mind? Another thing that we should notice, and that you'll see, if you look where it says the word enjambment, there's a little line drawn there. It's because everything in there is an example of enjambment. And we talked previously about enjambment being where you have a thought that starts on one line and it just keeps going and going and going. It does not just begin and end on the same line. These hips are big hips. That does end on the first line, technically, the complete thought does, but the lack of punctuation forces us to keep going. It pushes one thought into the next, into the next, into the next. And this usually creates a sense of connection, a sense of fluidity, or sometimes it can also create a sense of energy, a sense of hype, pushing things forward. So one thing that we should also notice is Anaphora. Anaphora is basically when you rename one thing with another thing. So hips are big hips. They need space to move around in. In this case, they is referring to hips. We're taking the place of hips. Another example, another rhetorical device that we see quite prevalently in this poem is alliteration. Alliteration being the repetition of consonant sounds. Consonants are the opposite of vowels. Consonant sounds are considered more harsh. They grab your attention more. They don't fit into little petty places. So we have that repeated T sound, don't fit into little petty. We also have the repetition of the P sound in petty places. And what you'll notice as you listen to this poem is there's a lot more emphasis on the ideas there because of that emphasis of sound. The ideas sound big, or ideas appear big because they sound big. We also see alliteration in the last couple lines here. They don't like to be held back. These hips have never been enslaved. The alliteration, I should say, actually comes in hips have, as well as have never enslaved. So we have the repetition of the H sound, hips have, the V sound, have nev slaved. We also have the repetition of an N sound, been enslaved. These hips have never been enslaved. You can hear the emphasis there. So let's move on to, let's continue on. And moving on to the rest of the poem, we see some personification, additional messing with capitalization and grammar, run-on sentences. We see the use of parallelism, or also called as parallel structure. We see the use of a simile and more enjambment, which she loves. So personification, starting with that is where you basically give something that does not have sentience. So these hips are not conscious. They can't do anything on their own. They can't make a decision about where they want to go or what they want to do. But instead of just saying, I do what I want, she's almost saying these hips are me, my body is me, we do what we want. Now, the parallel structure, they go where they want to go. They do what they want to do. It's meant to emphasize those ideas. These hips are mighty hips. These hips are magic hips. Again, we're trying to emphasize that idea. And then the enjambment that you see in the last few lines is meant to create that sense of connectedness I mentioned before. I have known them to put a spell on a man and spin him like a top. If we read that all in one line, we'd be rushing to the end of the line and running out of breath. I have known them to put a spell on a man and spin him like a top. Oh, okay. And then, of course, like a top is saying, I spun him so fast, I dizzied him with my body and myself, that he was spinning just like a top was. Obviously, it's not literal, but you get the point there.